Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Pharmacist Diaries podcast. I'm super excited today as I have a brilliant and wonderful pharmacist with me, Dr. Swathi Varanasi Diaz. The reason why I invited her onto the podcast is because she shares a little bit of that entrepreneurial spirit, just like I do. And the other thing that really intrigued me about her was that she's followed a really unconventional path into pharmacy. So if this is something that you're really craving, something you want to know more information about, then this could be the episode for you. When she first became a pharmacist, she followed a very unconventional approach by being part of a new residency program in the US. So I really want to dive into what that's all about, why she did it, what was her motivation behind that. But first, let's introduce her to the podcast, and I hope you really enjoy this episode. Hello, Swathi.
Hello.
I'm so happy to have you here.
I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, I know. I've been following you on LinkedIn. I also found you through the Pharmacy Podcast Network because I noticed that you had a podcast, and obviously Todd and I have that connection. So I thought that's really awesome because we've got something in common. But as I dived into looking at your background, your history in pharmacy, I noticed a lot of unconventional approaches, a lot of inspiring and motivating different aspects to what your career looks like in comparison to a traditional pharmacist who follows maybe a retail pharmacy route, a hospital route, or maybe going into the pharmaceutical industry. And I love that you've also done a variety of things, and you continuously, it seems, you enjoy that you like to have your kind of like hand in lots of, hats and lots of different aspects of pharmacy and non-pharmacy as well. My first question, I guess, as I always do, is to find out a little bit more about why you became a pharmacist in the first place.
Yeah, so thank you so much again for having me. So my story starts from, really where I grew up. So I grew up in New Jersey, in the US. And so New Jersey is known as one of the main locations in the US where there are lots of pharmaceutical industry, companies. And so the people that I knew growing up that were pharmacists were either working in industry, so they were doing marketing or something like in market research, or, they were designing clinical trials. And I was like, wow, this sounds exciting and sounds very multifaceted. And then the other people I knew owned their own pharmacies. So I was like, wow, they're entrepreneurs, they run their own businesses, they get to select, what's in inventory. Like all of that made like so much sense to me. So those were the two pharmacists pharmacists I knew in those two specific roles. And I was like, okay, both of those sound exciting to me. And it sounds like, this could be a way to curate, my resume or my career path to have all of these skills that I could then use in a bunch of different ways. Little did I know, going to pharmacy school, that the majority of the curriculum is quite clinical focused. And, the pharmacy school that I ended up going to was incredible. And I look back on it now and I'm so happy for the experience I had, but it was very, very clinically driven. And nearly everyone in my graduating class who wanted to do a residency did a residency, and they're, like cardiology focused pharmacists now, they're immunology focused, they're, infectious disease focused, all of that. And so that was such a surprise because I didn't know anyone really that worked in the hospital setting. So that's how it all started for me. And then it kind of just grew and blossomed from there.
Awesome. I think a lot of pharmacy curriculums are very clinically focused. And I appreciate, as a university lecturer myself, that the clinical aspect of pharmacy is extremely valuable and a necessity, let's call it. But I think as pharmacy is molding and changing and the options that are available to you as you graduate are expanding, I think now we have the opportunity to shift what curriculum looks like or create multiple different avenues. How they fit it all into the few years we're at college or university will be a challenge. However, I think, towards the end of your degree, I feel like we have to have like different avenues and be able to, I guess, see what different roads people want to go down. So if they definitely want to do the clinical kind of hospital route or retail pharmacy, versus industry or become a business owner or an entrepreneur or go into health tech or the digital side of pharmacy. At the moment, it's mostly you have to get the experience from internships or, summer placements or jobs that exist to find out more information. But I feel like there is definitely an opportunity within the curriculum to start molding what we actually teach and how we teach it as well.
Yeah, and not to jump ahead too far, but that is something that I've had in the back of my head or maybe even the front of my head since I graduated. And so now nearly any company that I go to, I say, can we create an internship program? Can I bring on, at least 1 to 3? At one point I had 9 interns. It's something that I'm really passionate about because I always think about when I was a student, it's like, oh, I wish that I had this type of remote learning opportunity where I could get involved and then say, I helped create these marketing materials that were HCP facing, or I helped write these blog posts that helped educate and cited peer-reviewed literature, but at the same time, we're super engaging and SEO optimized. So, those are things that I learned as I've progressed, that like those were things that were very marketable and easy for me to use in so many different, roles that I got later. But that's one of the things I'm so excited about is that like every place I go, how can I get PharmD students involved? And sometimes it's MD students or clinical nutrition students, but how can we get students more a part of the conversation as we're growing these small companies?
Absolutely. I mean, I started having interns work with me 2 years ago. So I just advertised it through social media, to be honest, just as let me just check if anyone's interested in learning
I did the
about
same thing.
podcasting.
Yeah.
And I got like 60 applications and I was like, okay, now I have to shortlist. Like, how do we do this? So me and my husband actually shortlisted. And then I had, I think, 10, I shortlisted 10 and then interviewed because I really wanted to, get to know the students. The most of them were pharmacy students and just understand a little bit about their strengths, what they're looking for, what is it that truly interests them when it comes to content creation, writing show notes, understanding kind of the administrative roles around podcasting, whether it's reaching out to guests or emailing our guests, things like that. And that's kind of snowballed. Like 2 of my interns have been with me for a year now, and they do sort of anywhere between sort of 2 and 5 hours per week. So I'm not expecting a lot, but I think within a year you can definitely learn so much. And in exchange, I don't pay my interns, but in exchange, I've been providing like advice, professional advice, like advice for, mentoring for them as they navigate through their career journey. I have so many connections now because of the podcast that anytime that they need anything, whether it's a summer placement or an internship, I can put them in touch with so many people. So, there are multiple benefits for them on the other side. But I love getting to know students and also exposing them to this unconventional approach of what pharmacy can offer.
And
Um,
I do the same
yeah,
thing, actually. So it's, some of my interns I have now, they're going through the fellowship process. They're going through their, summer internship application. So reviewing their resumes, reviewing their cover letters, helping them interview prep, all of those things. So it's depending on the company. Sometimes the internships are paid, sometimes they're not. And when they're not paid, I always try to ensure how can I add value to what they're doing because they're adding so much value to what, the company is trying to do.
absolutely. When I get to the point where I can afford to pay interns, 100%. If you're watching or listening to this episode, you will get paid. But right now, Pharmacist Diaries is pretty much a hobby and a side hustle. But it will change. I know that. I have faith. And so when that time comes, people will definitely get paid to work with me. And I can't wait. I'm going to grow a team, which is going to be so cool. And I love that idea. So tell me a little bit about what kind of college was like for you as a pharmacy student. What were your thoughts as to what your career was going to look like when you were actually studying pharmacy and understanding that a lot of the content is very clinically focused? You were more than likely to go into a patient facing role initially, but did you expose yourself to other stuff to find out what else was out there?
Yes, absolutely. So I was the sort of person who tried everything. And that is one of the top pieces of advice I give students. I just spoke at the Student National Pharmaceutical Association kind of unconventional career path showcase. And I was actually elected to their national board. So SNAFA holds a very, special place in my heart. So I recently spoke about this exact thing, and it's just try everything. Even if it doesn't sound that interesting to you in the moment, if you have an opportunity, apply and just try it. Because I think that's a way where you figure out what you like and what you don't like. But also at the same time, there are certain parts of every role that you might enjoy. So you can start creating this short list of, okay, as I move on in my career, these are the things that bring me joy. These are the things that I'm really good at, or these are the things that I like, but I need to evolve and learn more skills to get better at those things. So that was me in pharmacy school. I did everything from rodent research, like with laser microscopy, sitting in a dark room, looking at slides, all the way to, being a research assistant in a phase 3 clinical trial that was pharma sponsored. And that was working with a PI who was a PharmD PhD. So I was like, wow, she not only did a PharmD, then she went on and continued to pursue research and now runs these, pharma sponsored clinical trials. How exciting. So that really got me interested more in clinical trial management. So I was doing those sorts of things. I got involved in organizations. So as I mentioned, I was elected to the Student National Pharmaceutical Association National Board. So I did a lot of things on the national level, and the entire mission of that organization is serving the underserved. And so got to be involved in so many student run or university, like College of Pharmacy run volunteer programs, and really just different ways that we gave back to the community. And fostered a lot of, professional development for students as well, like bringing in the first industry-related speaker to SNAFA, which was years ago. But it's exciting to see that relationship has continued to grow and evolve. And then other things I was involved in, kind of inspired from SNAFA, was I, at the time, was living with medical students, and they had all these incredible opportunities to go out and use some of the skills they were learning in class. Apart from, their required OSCEs and things like that, they had other ways that they could go into clinics and different things in the community. And so one of the clinics that they went to, they were complaining, one evening, oh, it'd be so great to have, someone who knows a little bit more about drugs there. Because, as we know, physicians in training, don't get much, pharmacotherapy at all. And so that was like a light bulb moment for me to think, okay, maybe there's a way that the College of Pharmacy can get involved. So one of the things I'm most proud of from my pharmacy school curriculum is that I worked with some of the professors in the College of Pharmacy and bridged a relationship to create an opportunity for College of Pharmacy students to volunteer and then eventually get course credit at this bilingual diabetes education program at a free clinic. And so it started off as this is a great opportunity, all the way to like now students are getting course credit, and it's still a sustainable program. I keep hearing about it from current students that they're involved in it and everything. And so it's something that, I had thought about. And I think, if I look back at a lot of the things that I'm proud of, it's like a lot of the things that I had an idea about, and then I found the right like collaborators or strategic partners or mentors, peers, and we all worked together to make it happen. And then to see it, either continue to be sustainable or maybe it's not. But that's something we've learned from like what we did well and what we didn't do well. And it's really taken me to so many different opportunities and experiences of like, I'm willing to try these things, and like maybe they won't, end up becoming a forever thing, but that's also fine because from every experience we learn something.
Absolutely. And when you first started talking, it was sounded like myself, because I always say to the younger generation, whether it's students or interns or trainees, as we call them here in the UK, is that you have to explore lots of different opportunities. And it's not just about putting, work experience on a resume. It's about understanding who you are as an individual, understanding what you like, what you don't like, and that reflective journey is so important. I put out a free 5-day kind of career clarity challenge where you get an email and a video from me every day for 5 days, and a lot of that is around the reflective piece. So day one is more about understanding you, your passions, your interests, like things that you do for hobbies, and understanding like why you like them. For me, arts and crafts growing up was a massive part of things that I just enjoyed doing. So creativity. My mum's like that. My mum spends hours redecorating the house for different seasons of the year. So at the moment, everything's Halloween and kind of like autumn or fall focused. But, going into Christmas, the house will completely transform itself into a like winter wonderland. And then Easter, it changes. So creativity in our house it was quite a big deal. And I think part of that came from living in the US, because when we lived in Virginia, when I was in high school and undergrad, um, we had so many friends who had houses like this. So my best friend had a Christmas tree all year round, but it just changed according to the seasons and holidays. And and also in the US, you have so much variety when it comes to decorating. Like Target was one of my favorite stores and still is to this day. We don't have it here, and I do miss it. But you can get so much fun, creative, tools and decorations, and so that was a big part of like my life. And now podcasting, it's so clear to me. Podcasting is all about creativity and innovation and building something from nothing. So for me, I can see where my interests lied in my hobbies, and now making that kind of my sort of job, let's call it. Um, and this 5-day career challenge also highlights sort of like your strengths. What are you good at? Where can those skills be placed into different jobs? But also, I link in your life values, because I've personally made the mistake of putting a career first in front of everything, and ensuring that everything is around career progression and what job I have and how it's going to lead to the next opportunity, without necessarily thinking how it links into my life. And now I'm married with kids. That aspect of my life has become so much more important, that my career has had to mold. And I feel like I've learned it a little bit more of the hard way rather than a strategic or an organized way. It's sort of learning from my mistakes. So I talk about sort of your life values and building a job around those life values rather than the other way around. So a lot of the things that you say resonate with me. And I do 100% believe that students need to expose themselves, because also when you listen to a lecturer or you're listening in class, what you hear may sound really exciting, but then when you actually do it and then you realize you have to do that for 40 hours a week, you may or may not like it. You may find that actually, the idea of doing research and being in a lab all day, every day, it sounds really exciting and intriguing and interesting, and, working on a clinical trial. But actually, a lot of the jobs could be lonely. Like for me, if you're having to work alone for so many hours every single day, long hours as well, like for me, that's torture. I need to be around other people. And I love to be around people where we share ideas, brainstorm, work together, collaborate, the service improvement, all of that lights me up. So for me, being kind of like that lone ranger in terms of the research world, if I was doing like a PhD on my own, I could do it, but I don't think I would necessarily love the journey.
And this is something that I wish that pharmacy students learned earlier, because the way that we're talked to about like, oh, you could become, an immunology pharmacist. It's like, you could work on this, you could, be a part of this. And it's almost created to be like, this is the list of what the job description would look like, rather than this is what your life would look like with the job. And it's something that I've learned that I wasn't even doing consciously, but just from trying all these other things, I was able to kind of whittle down, this is what I like about it and this is what I don't. But it wasn't like at the time I was so self-aware and, conscious of what I was doing. It was just, I was just a curious person that I ended up getting to the point now where I'm like, okay, I have the balance. I have all of these things that I was craving, but I just wish that someone had come in even for like a 30 or 60-minute lunch lecture in pharmacy school to just let us know that, it's not just about your job, but what does your job look like with the other things that you want to do throughout the day or throughout the weeks or throughout the months. And I hear from so many students that are now in residency or finishing their fellowship, and they're like, I wish someone had told me what this job actually entailed and what it meant for the rest of my life, rather than just being, everything else around my job. But how does my job play into, my personal life, for example?
Absolutely. And when it comes with pharmacists, like we're quite type A personalities. So even when we apply for jobs, we look at the job description and like the list of criteria of things that you're meant to have or that are essential versus desirable. And it feels like a very much a tick box exercise. And you have to have everything ticked off the list or you're not eligible to apply. And I think you get into this mindset where you put yourself down or you get imposter syndrome because you don't necessarily feel like you're good enough for what's on that piece of paper or what you see electronically. And it's taken me a long time to shift to say to myself that, hey, I might not have everything in this list, but what skills do I have or how can I showcase or demonstrate or explain in an interview how I'm going to learn those skills or apply knowledge into practice when the job becomes a reality. And that I've done now a few times and I've become a little bit more accustomed because I am applying to jobs that are a little bit outside of my comfort zone. I'm pushing myself a little bit further when it comes to what I apply for. And it has really helped me to shift, mentally to say, actually, no, I can do this. But I think as pharmacists, just, I don't know, we're very traditional in our sort of mindset where everything has to line up on paper.
I love
Um,
that you brought
yeah,
this up because this is advice that I give others, that I say when you see a job description, those are recommendations.
yeah,
Those are not requirements. And so, like, you might fit some of them, you might fit like 40% of them. But if you are passionate enough about the job and you're excited about the company or the role or something like that, and if there's some way that you can demonstrate from your CV that you have transferable skills from what you're doing right now, then why not apply? Like, why
yeah,
not give yourself the chance?
yeah.
So yeah, and I always compare myself to, other healthcare providers who have a very different, perspective on that. I think other healthcare professionals, other healthcare providers have, maybe a bit more ego, if you will, than pharmacists. And they would look at that list and say, okay, those are recommendations, but I can do it. And it's like, if
Mm.
they can do it, how come, we can't do it? Or how come I can't do it?
Agreed.
Mhm.
And I have two really good examples of this for anyone who's watching this video or listening in. When I lived in the UAE and I was working in Abu Dhabi, I worked for a company called National Ambulance, and I did a lot of education and training for paramedics. And then when I moved back to the UK, I had spent 3 or 4 years in a very sort of leadership role, kind of a lot of operations. After finishing a 3-year residency, I went straight into kind of leadership and an operational position, which I wasn't quite expecting to do, but it was what was available to me in the country. And I just thought, get in, just get the license, do a job, and then figure it out. And I loved the job anyways. And part of that was working for the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix and the Formula One. So it was very cool. And I loved it. Yeah, super cool. But when I moved back to the UK, I felt like I was really far behind a lot of my friends and my peers and people that I did residency with who were in super specialist clinical positions. And I got FOMO and felt like I was missing out or I wasn't good enough. And I struggled to mentally kind of shift my mindset. I eventually did, and I applied for a job which included education and training as a major part of the role. And I just taught paramedics for 3 years. And I thought, no, you can do this. Like, it's completely transferable to training pharmacists, pharmacy students, and sort of newly qualified pharmacists. There's no reason that you can't do it. So that was one example where I had to then kind of sell myself from my skill set point of view. But then also, when I moved back to the UK, I discovered pediatrics and I fell in love. And I only worked within pediatrics for about 6 months. And then I was going to apply for a job in a pediatric hospital. And I definitely felt like, oh, I'm not really sure if I'm going to be good enough. I don't have enough pediatric experience. And part of that job was split with the university teaching pharmacy students. So I was like, boom, I've got the education bit. I'm confident with that, but I'm less confident with the pediatric side of things. And the hospital that I applied for is a tertiary center. So we do renal transplants, We have the most severe sort of conditions around sort of epilepsy, metabolic syndrome, lots of cardiology, surgeries. So the complexity of the patients is on quite a deeper level compared to the sort of district general hospitals that you would attend in your local area. I had no expertise in any of those kind of areas, but my enthusiasm and my excitement for doing pediatrics and having discovered what I figured out as like my love, I got the job from that and I was winning. And they really helped me in the first year. They kind of created a rotation for me where I would move to different ward areas and get that kind of experience. So I didn't need a pediatric sort of residency for the job like you would in the US. I was able to utilize my skills and my experience and my knowledge and just transfer that into the job. And yeah, it took me time to get into it, but they gave me a chance, which was really amazing, and it worked.
And I feel like my story is similar in that as I've gone from one role to the other, it's like, how can you demonstrate that enthusiasm, the transferable skills, but also you need that other side to, meet you in the middle to give you that shot. And that's what I tell students and other pharmacists who want to make a transition or do something a little bit different is, you can only bring, so much. So if you are at, 11 out of 10 with your enthusiasm, your passion, what the other skills you can bring to the role, if they're willing to meet you, where you are, then you just need someone. You just need one person to give you a chance. So it might seem
Absolutely.
overwhelming to apply to, a bajillion jobs, but you just need one.
That is so true. But also, what else is true is that it's okay if they say no, because they may be looking for someone who's got a lot of experience, who can be a leader in that area of expertise. And that may be just what they need. And that doesn't mean that you're not good enough. It doesn't mean that you don't qualify for the job. It doesn't mean that you don't have the skills and experience to actually do it. It's just that they're looking for someone who's already got the experience and can kind of slot into the job as quickly as possible, because that might be what they need right now. And it's nothing against where you're at in your journey and what you can provide. And I think people need to hear this because it is so hard and competitive in the world of pharmacy. And pharmacists are really competitive humans, and we take everything really seriously. And, we want to be the best versions of who we are. And that can get quite intense. It can get quite intense in the real world. If you find yourself constantly feeling run down and lacking energy, I may have a solution for you. Consider boosting your immune system and overall health with Immune Hero by The Naked Pharmacy. This supplement offers a 100% naturally sourced vitamin C from amla fruit and zinc from holy basil, oyster, and shiitake mushrooms, along with organic moringa for your gut health. This combination does 3 things. 1, it enhances your immunity by stimulating the production and function of white blood cells, which are crucial for fighting off infections. Number 2, it improves the production of collagen, which will help to maintain the health of your skin, hair, and nails, and reduce the signs of aging. And number 3, it will also provide antioxidant support, promoting wound healing and enhancing your body's ability to absorb iron. Use code PD20 for 20% off and start your day feeling refreshed with Immune Hero. So tell me, once you qualified as a pharmacist and the idea of residency must have come up from, understanding what that meant for you in terms of your career. And it's a tough program to get into. We know that there are a lot of applications. There's a lot of competition. I've interviewed multiple pharmacists from the US who've explained this. And I can link all of that in the show notes, actually. But tell me a little bit about how you discovered a very unconventional approach to residency and how you got involved with that.
Yes. So as I was going through all of these experiences in pharmacy school, a few that I mentioned, I also failed to mention that I worked for a startup in the area and the local ecosystem, which opened my eyes to, what pharmacists can do on small teams, especially like in a kind of tech or wearable focused company. So, as I was going through all of those things, one of the things that really stood out to me as something that was missing, especially as I went through a lot of the chronic disease state classes, was, they would talk about lifestyle modifications or quality of life of the patient. They just throw it in, maybe one or 3 words or something on a slide. but they never really talked about what that meant. And so I started, on a deep dive just in my free time of like, so what does this actually mean? If pharmacists really are the most successful healthcare professional, I feel like I should know something a little bit more about that because I'm not getting it from my curriculum. And it's not that my school was amazing. It's more of, the curriculum just didn't have that. And so I started to explore and learn more. And I realized that, I didn't know it was called integrative medicine at the time. But as I was curating my final year of rotations, all of the clinical rotations, I was like, I need to do a variety of absolutely everything. And one of the things I wanted to do was focus on this, lifestyle medicine, quality of life for the patient, longevity kind of discussion. So I found a pharmacist who, at the time I was in the South, she was on the West Coast. And I asked her, is there some way that I could do a rotation with you? I see that you've done rotations with students from my school in years past. And she said, absolutely. And so actually my entire last year of rotations, I was only in the South for 2 rotations because I was traveling out of a suitcase. And every month I went to a different state or a different country. And I just curated my schedule like that as a part of the, adventure and experience. But also I wanted to get such a variety of different experiences and different types of mentors and different types of practice sites or even, organizations or industry locations. So when I went out to do the rotation with her, I saw the way that she interacted with patients. She was a pharmacist first and foremost, always thinking about the risk versus benefit ratio for every single patient, evaluating every single drug that they were taking, but also thinking about, okay, let's say they're on 6 medications. But they came in and they want something for sleep, but they don't want a prescription. They want some sort of supplement or something that's going to help them, or even just a nutritional strategy or a sleep hygiene recommendation that could really help them. And I really loved that perspective, that it was more of an and rather than an or. It was like, what can I do in addition from a safe and effective, perspective rather than, I want to stop taking all my medication. What can I take instead? And so I really loved the perspective. I loved the way she interacted with patients. And even 2 weeks into the rotation, very soon after meeting her and seeing, the way that she viewed medicine and viewed healing, I said, is there some way that we can continue working together? And she said, I've always wanted to have a resident, but never had the bandwidth or anyone interested. And so we just continued the conversation and decided to start the first ever and still only integrative medicine focused residency program for pharmacists. So that was quite a few years ago. And it's something that I'm so proud of, that we had this idea and it was something that I wanted to do. And I found someone who also, would give me a chance, like we were just talking about. And then we decided to build it together.
Oh, I love this. This is amazing. And is this in a private clinic or a hospital setting? Where was it that
Yeah,
you
so
were?
it was actually at 2 different sites. So the first site was at a pharmacy. So it is a pharmacy at the end of the day because it did, not did, I mean, it still exists. They just celebrated their 80th year as an independent pharmacy. I think they're one of the oldest independent pharmacies in the country, and definitely one of the most unique because they have an interdisciplinary team. So they do dispense medications, but that's not the core and crux of what they do. They actually work as a team collaboratively to think about, okay, someone walked in, they're interested in something for sleep. Do they want to talk to the naturopath on staff? Do they want to talk to the integrative pharmacist, who is my mentor? Do they want to talk to the acupuncturist, the herbalist, the, clinical nutritionist? I don't know if I already mentioned that one, but yeah, so they, it was like dependent on what the patient wanted. And generally before any patient left any patient or customer, left the pharmacy, they would always come to the pharmacy section to just have all of their drugs and all of their supplements reviewed, just to ensure that, if the clinical nutritionist was going to recommend, hey, we think you should, increase your amount of high quality protein to, 30 grams per meal or something like that, is that going to fit with their medications? Is that going to disrupt something that they're already taking? Or is it, maybe they want to take a supplement called, let's say they want to take kava kava for sleep. Is that going to interact with one of the supplements they're already taking? Or is it going to interact with one of the drugs that they're taking, which is possible with kava kava? So like things like that, where the pharmacist got to be involved in almost every single customer discussion. And so that was one of the sites. The other site was a clinic. And so the clinic was run by a College of Traditional Chinese Medicine. And so I was able to, be kind of the quintessential integrative pharmacy trainee at the pharmacy, but then be the pharmacy, point person at the clinic, because at the end of the day, that clinic was run by acupuncturists and herbalists. And what they really felt like they needed is that if they're going to recommend an herb, sometimes, the patient would say, yes, would love to take the herb, but can I take that with aspirin? Can I take that with my HIV medication? It was an HIV clinic. So can I take that with, my HIV medication? Or I'm having these issues or side effects from my HIV medication. What can I do to combat some of these side effects? Or maybe is there another HIV medication that could suit them better? So I actually ended up liaising and working with a lot of healthcare providers, or namely like HIV physicians in the LA area, to help patients get, the drug that makes the best sense for them, but also help those, providers also understand what supplements could work and what supplements they definitely should not be on. And it's just the simple things and sometimes it's like the simplest of recommendations that I still think about, where, let's say a patient came in and said, my friend recommended that tea helped him go to sleep. And so I started drinking tea. And I'm like, what kind of tea did you start drinking? And they're like, oh, green tea. But for some reason, it's not helping me. It's keeping me awake. I feel like ever since I started the tea, I can't fall asleep. And so sometimes it's as simple as that, to just, be the person who can educate the patient on, oh, green tea actually has a high amount of caffeine, especially if you're drinking multiple cups. And so, how about, thinking about cutting off your caffeine, at about 2 p.m. And then let's list some herbal teas. And I would write down some herbal teas for them that would work. So sometimes it was very pharmacy focused, liaising with the HCP. And then sometimes it was very much like, what's something in their lifestyle that they can adjust, that then they come back for their next month's appointment and give me this huge hug that they've slept so amazingly because they stopped the green tea.
Oh, that's so cool. That is really interesting. And how do you actually, I guess if you start a residency program, where do you get approvals for this, and how do you prove that the curriculum is kind of worthy of a residency, and what are the criteria and things? Did you have to help the pharmacist with this?
Yes, I did. And so this was a full process of do we want to go down the accreditation route? What does that look like? And so we had to do the entire kind of evaluation. And then also, do we want to partner with a university? That was a huge question of, do we want a university buy-in? Because one of the things, I'm being fully transparent, right? One of the things when we started the residencies, we did not have funding. So I graduated, told my parents, I'm moving 3,000 miles away, but it's going to work out and it's going to be fine. And so, we had to hit the ground running to figure out, are we going to find a university partner that will fund some of this? Are we going to find, are we going to get accredited? And if so, what does that look like? And so all of these things were big decisions. And I think it was great for us to sit down and have these conversations to decide, what is the goal of the residency? Is the goal to abide by a bunch of these, regulations? Is that something that we want? Is that something that's going to add the reputability, and therefore should we do it? And so at the end of the day, we decided not to go through with accreditation because we wanted to ensure that we had the flexibility to do exactly what we wanted to do. Because not only were there those two practice sites, I should also mention there were a lot of opportunities for teaching. Because, as the pretty much only integrative pharmacist involved in academia in that area, she not only taught at colleges of pharmacy, she also taught at colleges of nursing and colleges of traditional Chinese medicine. And she was very involved in kind of academia in general and had great relationships with these universities. And the way that, if we were to go down the accreditation route, that would not really be the case because of the percentage that, the trainee needs to be in a practice setting, and what sorts of experiences they had. And we just wanted to have a little bit more flexibility on what I was doing and how I was doing it. and some of the additional, work that I wanted to take on. Like I wanted to do a plant-based nutrition certificate from Cornell as a part of my residency. And so if I did that, that wouldn't really fit with, some of the accreditation standards. I also wanted to start dipping my toes into working with startups and seeing how I could leverage some of my pharmacy knowledge with now this integrative medicine knowledge and how I can help other companies, with whether it's product development, clinical trial management, or even thinking about, which I didn't know at the time was called medical affairs. How can I help them with, the curation of materials or educating healthcare providers and doing a lot of things I was already doing in the pharmacy setting or in the clinic setting. But anyways, long story short, it was a long, arduous process to figure out exactly what we wanted and what the intention was of the residency. And so that's what we decided at the end.
But that's awesome because at the end of the day, you work with someone. You were so early in your pharmacy journey, right? As a pharmacist, and you had this incredible mentor and guidance and someone who was willing to think outside the box and do things, in that kind of unconventional approach. And being part of that journey is really important because you must have learned so much along the way and understood, okay, well, what do we have to do to actually get it accredited? What are the rules around it? Like you said, you have to have funding. And then you have to kind of stick to what is required rather than having that flexibility to be able to mold the program to what actually the pharmacist who's training needs. So I love that you actually had the opportunity to get involved with that so early in your journey because you would have learnt so many new things that you wouldn't have been exposed to when you were in pharmacy school too. And this sounds like it's opened up a lot of opportunities and just opened your mindset to so many other things that are going on. So after you completed the residency or towards the end of the residency, what was your kind of next step?
So at that point, I had realized, okay, I love the patient care perspective, but that's not something I want to do day in, day out. Not something that you learn in 1 month, but something you learn after doing, for a longer period of time. And so what I realized that I loved the education perspective and was like, okay, do I want to go into academia? And I was helping my mentor with a lot of different, academic pursuits, helping her with lecturing. We did quite a few CE programs together that year. So we did a lot of things within medical education. And so I found, a lot of the conversations I was having with healthcare providers is they were asking, what is the clinical research behind, insert supplement here, insert proprietary ingredient here, or botanical or anything of that nature. So I was thinking, okay, how can I get more involved in bolstering the research that's out there for whether it's botanical medicine, supplements, but also how can I have a larger scale impact? Because I feel like I got the clinical knowledge that I wanted and that I needed and that I was craving that then I could use as a backbone for anything that I did after. So I was ready to kind of add different tools to my tool belt, if you will. And so after that, I just was on a pursuit and I've always been, not always, I wish I had started earlier, but I started really in residency with just trying to network as much as possible and just learn what people were doing in the space. And I, again, like when I talk to students, I'm like, please start this as early as possible. It's just a quick intro call, a cold DM, just go for it. Because again, like the worst they could say is no, or like, honestly, most of the time people just don't answer, which is fine. So, at least I think it's fine because I don't take it personally because it's, people have a lot of things going on in their life. And so if they don't respond, that's, it's not on me. And so, through my networking and everything, I found that, and what I was doing really was looking up people in the integrative medicine space. What were they doing? And most of the people at that time when I was looking were physicians, were clinical nutritionists, and was looking at the different roles that they had and just like looking at their LinkedIn, their journey, and seeing if they'd be willing to hop on a quick call with me to discuss, what they do, what they love about it, what they don't love about it. And that really helped me figure out without actually, having to go pursue some of these paths, like just hearing their candid responses. And especially when you're in more of an unconventional field, I think that people are so open to sharing. This is what is working. This is what isn't working. These are opportunities for improvement in the role or in the career path. And like, it's so great to see, people interested in it because this is what you could bring, not even necessarily just me specifically, but what the next generation can bring to this career. So I learned a lot from those experiences, and I found that, maybe the next best step would be, let's do something on a macro scale where I'm at a company that's impacting thousands of patients a week. And so I pursued a medical affairs postdoctoral fellowship that was at a medical device company. And at the time, when I joined, the idea was, they were very interested in thinking about different therapeutic areas for their medical device. They're FDA approved for angina. And so, they already had, the clinical backing, they had done clinical research. So I would be a part of that clinical research discussion, but I would also be a part of like, how do you liaise with healthcare providers? How do you serve as that medical affairs or, scientific expert on the team? So that was something that, for me, bridged that experience of patient care with this macro scale impact, but in a small, innovative company where I could wear a bunch of different hats and just learn so much in such a short period of time because the program was only 1 year. So I was able to get involved in so many things and manuscript submissions. And I had such a great experience working with that team and realizing that, wow, everything that I learned in my residency now I'm turning around and using it, but again, in an unconventional way. Like I'm not using it in a patient care dynamic, but I'm using it in a way that now informs so much of what I'm doing, but kind of more from a business or, industry way. So that was what I did after that. And then after that was then recruited to join Everly Health, which is at the time they were the pioneer in consumer initiated testing in the US. And so that was the perfect blend of preventative health, lifestyle medicine, patient empowerment, but also integrative medicine. It was really the perfect blend of everything up to that point in my career.
That's awesome. And so many different skills that you're using. And I could see how your journey has molded. But at the same time, I just love how you're constantly thinking outside the box and not necessarily like going back towards that kind of hospital role or a retail job. And medical affairs is becoming more and more popular now. I'm seeing a lot more pharmacists on LinkedIn, like shouting loud and proud about what they're doing within industry. The MSL roles are becoming a lot more popular. I've seen a lot of US pharmacists even helping other pharmacists or pharmacy students get into industry as well. That's becoming quite popular, and it's quite interesting, intriguing to see what people are doing from an industry point of view. But did you the whole time feel that you were a pharmacist? Because this is a conversation I've had with a few other people, that once you leave that patient facing role, did your mindset shift where you felt like you had a different title, or did you still feel like, first and foremost, yeah, I was a pharmacist, or I am a pharmacist in that role? Or have you molded to believe that you've obviously got lots of different skills, you wear different hats, and you're, multifaceted professional?
Very interesting question. I think, like if, when you go to a cocktail party and people ask what you do, oftentimes, for the longest time, I just said I was a pharmacist. It was just simple,
Yeah.
easy, like people understood it. Especially, in different circles, it's like to try to explain what you do, especially like now what I do is, I do a bunch of different things. And so, sometimes it's just easier to be like, yeah, I'm a pharmacist. Right. And so, it's just kind of a go-to. And I would say it depends the role, at least for now, because some of the roles I've taken on, the reason that I feel like I've gotten the role, or well, not the only reason, but maybe one of the prime reasons why I'm selected for the role over other people is because they realize the value of what a pharmacist can bring. And that really plays in well, plus the other experience I've had. So,
Yeah.
but I would say for some roles, being a pharmacist is one of the main reasons why they're like, yes, absolutely. And, because there are not enough pharmacists, hopefully, people listening to this will be inspired and ready to be another pharmacist that joins the fold. But, I do think that there needs to be more pharmacists going out there and doing exciting things that are a bit more unconventional. And, there's nothing wrong with the conventional, of course, but there are just so many other opportunities out there that I don't want pharmacists to feel limited because, sometimes I'm in the room, and the reason I'm selected to be in the room is because the entire medical advisory board of a startup is all physicians. And they're like, oh, thank gosh, we wanted a pharmacist who understands this, who's in insert niche here. It could be literally any niche. For me, it is integrative medicine, but they're looking for someone who understands integrative medicine. They already have a medical advisory board of 4 physicians who are patient facing, who are doing incredible things every single day and helping patients. But what they really are looking for, and maybe sometimes they don't even know they're looking for that, but then I hop on a call with them and meet them, and they're like, wow, this is something that's missing for us, is someone who gets integrative medicine, but also understands the complexity of drug interactions and drug herb interactions, and has the clinical backing, but also understands, how pharmacy or, medicine in general fits into tech or fits into non-FDA approved products. And that's predominantly the sectors I work in now, are tech or health tech specifically, and CPG. So, products that are consumer product goods. So things that are not FDA approved. And it's something that I wish that more people talked about, because there's so many different opportunities for pharmacists. And so if we just think about what's our niche and how can we get into these rooms based off of that. And I think that's also helped me bridge into some of the opportunities that I've had in the venture capital ecosystem, is that there are a lot of physicians excited, or even other healthcare providers excited to be on these advisory boards and help venture capitalists make educated decisions on how to write checks into health tech companies, into CPG companies. But there are not enough pharmacists doing that. I know 2 others, because we went out on the internet and found each other, right? But there are just not enough people doing that, where, if these VCs are writing checks, we need to be advocating for a lot of the issues that pharmacists are facing, or, that other healthcare professionals are facing, that only we are really privy to through, our experience with patient care, or experience on interdisciplinary teams and working in different industry settings. I hope that answered your question. I kind of just feel like I got on a soapbox.
No, you're cool. All good. I mean, I'm asking your opinion because I've had this conversation a few times with people who followed a kind of unconventional approach, or moved into areas where you're not necessarily that traditional patient-facing pharmacist, and how do they perceive themselves? I think it's important to raise that question, because a lot of the time, when people do follow that unconventional route, they're in a role that effectively ends up helping a patient. So yes, of course, you should feel like a pharmacist in that journey. But I think because we're raised in an environment traditionally in our curriculum when it comes to pharmacy school, or if you're here as an undergraduate pharmacy student in the UK, a lot of the time your mindset is focused on what you're like as a pharmacist when you're in front of a patient, or if you're traditionally working in industry and you're doing the research and development, clinical trials, you obviously then still feel very much like a pharmacist. You're surrounded by lots of other pharmacists as well. But you may be working now for companies where you might be the only pharmacist who works
Oftentimes,
within.
yes.
Yeah. So that
Mhm.
that makes it quite unique. You may, it feels different. And to build that confidence to say that, hey, I am a specialist in this specific field, and I can support you with this, this, and this. It must have helped you on that journey to kind of build the confidence to do lots of different things, which is cool. I love it.
Yeah. And sometimes it's just kind of hearing the feedback from outside and internalizing it. Because I think that as pharmacists, as healthcare professionals, we're just like everyone else, really. But we're very prone to imposter syndrome. And there are certain things I'm very confident about. Again, job descriptions are just recommendations. I very much believe that. And so, but at the end of the day, there are so many things where I'm like, you're asking me to do what? Okay. And then I just kind of nod my head and I'm like, yep, I'll do that for you. And then I close my computer, take a breath, I open it again, and then start Googling what that even means. And that's happened before. Maybe not so much recently, but especially when I was starting out, they're like, oh, you're a pharmacist. Oh, you know this, you must know this. And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. Let's sign the contract. I'll be your consultant. And then I just figure it out afterwards. So you just have to have that kind of faith in yourself and faith in your transferable skills that like, if someone else thinks that you can do it, chances are you can do it.
Yeah.
You just need to, say yes and then figure it out.
Yeah. But I think that's cool. I think that's a great way to learn and to expose yourself to different skills, different environments, different experiences. And it's an amazing way to learn because you'll be quite motivated to learn quite quickly because you're expected to deliver on something specific. And then you're like, okay, I need to like up my game right now and be able to learn a million things. And you work really hard to make that a reality for your client or, your employer. Tell us a little bit about your journey from kind of working with different companies in what you would consider like traditional employment and when you kind of made the decision to think about being, self-employed, becoming an entrepreneur, consulting rather than being like a full-time employee. When did that shift start happening? And I guess how did you make that shift for yourself?
I think part of it was thinking about, what I want. And like through all these different experiences, I was like, okay, I love this aspect of this job. I love this aspect of this job. And, there are so many different things that we learn along the way, just learning with working with different people, working in different environments. So I was just kind of taking note again, like not as I was going along, but just, every quarter, every year, I would say like every quarter, every half year or so, I just have let's just sit down and think about life kind of conversation with myself. Sometimes it's like pen and paper. Sometimes it's, like recording videos of myself just thinking and speaking. So anyway, so I was just going through that process and it wasn't actually something that I did naturally. Like it wasn't something where, as in, that's a weird way to say it, but I mean, it's not something where I was like, all of a sudden, I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to do this kind of a thing. And it wasn't like a light bulb moment for me either that all of a sudden I was like, oh, like I want to go into consulting. It's honestly been something that just happened organically. And
Cool.
I, again, being fully transparent. So I was at Everly Health, loved the experience, loved the people that I worked with, like some of the best people I've worked with to this day. And, I was like, everything was going well, but the company wasn't doing well. And it's kind of the risks and the benefits, if you will, of a small company that, is growing very, very fast. And, they, let go of a lot of the medical and clinical personnel in one fell swoop. And so at that point, I was, kind of forced to make this decision of like, am I going to go back and get a quintessential normal job again? Am I going to, consider consulting? So I just started networking and applying and doing all the things and just seeing like what would fit. But I was trying to be intentional about it of like, these are my skills. These are the companies I'm interested in. These are roles I'm interested in. But also just, as I was networking, I wasn't really pitching like, this is exactly what I can do to help you at the time. But as I was meeting people and different startups, I realized that there were things that I could help with that, whether it was on a part-time basis or something that was even like a shorter contract, but they just need help with these certain initiatives that with my background, I could help. And so I just kind of fell into it. Started off with one client and was like, wow, this is going really well. I really liked working with her. And then after that, she gave me another project. I actually, hilariously last week, like I worked for her 2 years ago, and then she reached out to me and was like, hey, there's this other project. I know it's been a while, but do you want to have a chat? And so now 2 years later, I might be working with her again, which is so sweet and full circle. So it's, I just kind of fell into it. And then after I was like, okay, I like this. Like, let me continue to network. Let me see what other roles are out there. And then I also started exploring after getting that role, okay, like, are there any LinkedIn like job postings that, I could explore that are part-time? And so started curating this list and this roster of people where people as in like companies that were either part-time roles or were kind of like fractional executive roles or consultant roles with small companies. And just doing a combination of the two. But yeah, it wasn't something I just decided I'm going to be a consultant. I'm going to work for myself. It just, I started adding these different projects, and then it's now at a point where I'm nearly full time or over full time.
Woohoo!
Yeah.
I mean, that's really interesting because my pathway is quite similar. And let me ask you two questions. When it comes because you talk a lot about understanding who you are in this conversation. You've talked a lot about understanding what you've liked, what you've not liked, what skills that you've utilized in different roles and how they could be applicable or transferable to another opportunity, or what people that you've met that can then open up your network to other projects or tasks or jobs that you could do. Understanding a little bit more about like your passions, your interests, like what drives you, what motivates you. Are you an individual who writes things down in a notebook? Do you log it in a diary? Do you have like a specific format of maybe documenting things every 3 months, or like every time that you need to brain dump a lot of information? Yeah, how do you do it? I'm curious.
Oh my gosh, I wish I had this beautiful, like, like template that I could share with everyone, or I had this like process that, it's on my calendar and I get a ding like reminder to do it every quarter. It is not that. It's a bit more organic, at least for now. It's just every so often I just sit and I take inventory of like, who are the projects, like who am I working with? What projects am I working on? Do I like these projects? Because a lot of the way that I like to curate these relationships are not, and I have done short-term contracts before that are like 6 month or 9 month or 1 year. I've done those before, but I prefer to like curate long-term relationships. And so, like it's kind of just been, okay, am I enjoying this? Am I not? Do I want to continue doing it? If not, like, is this time for a conversation with that, employer or that supervisor to decide like, maybe I don't want to continue, or maybe I want my role to shift a little bit if I know that I'm doing a good job. So it's kind of just been that. And also, there always are, just again, full transparency. It's like there always are those few companies that, if a role came up that was full time, I would happily do that. And so it's not like I'm going to be a consultant for the rest of my life. It's more of like, I really like who I'm working with right now. Things are great. Some contracts are ending soon, but that's also fine. And so, I'm always open to thinking about, okay, this is like this era of this life. And then maybe the next era will be something different. But like, I'm just always thinking about how I can learn and grow from this experience, and then how I can bring that to something else, but very much want to stay in the domain of like, building upon my clinical experience and then experience either in, health tech or CPG. But yeah, I wish it was something a bit more concrete, but it's really just
No,
taking
I wasn't.
inventory. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I wasn't expecting that you had a magic
I know some
formula
people
or
who
like a
do though.
form. It would be awesome if you did. But also, it's just useful for people to hear, or to watch us having this conversation, to know that those thoughts have a lot of meaning. Those thoughts have a massive impact on your next steps. And sometimes you might be doing a job for a year or a year and a half, and you're like kind of craving something different, or your brain starts thinking, okay, well, what's the next opportunity? Or maybe you've networked with someone and they've, a spark's gone off, a light bulb moment where you're like, oh, I wish I was doing more of this. And you automatically shift or transition. Um, for me, it was like I tend to stay in jobs like for 2 to 3 years, and then I'm kind of ready to spread my wings and try something different. I've always wanted to be very loyal to an organization, but I've realized that I do like variety. I like change. I like new environments. I love meeting new people and connecting with new people. So actually, change for me and working with different employers is fun. And I should embrace that part of my personality rather than feeling guilty that I've not been loyal to the organization that I have worked for, which is how I felt. I have felt that in the past. Um, and I think society kind of makes you believe that you should be loyal to an organization, or traditionally it used to be like that. It's totally shifted now, I think. Um, but I have also discovered from podcasting that obviously I network mainly through social media, or through word of mouth, people who connect with me and say, actually, I've got a recommendation for someone to come onto the podcast. And just having open, honest, friendly conversations. I tend to meet someone virtually just to say hello and just get to know them for fun, once or twice a week. So I meet a new
I do the same
pharmacist.
thing.
Yeah,
Yep.
because do you know what? It's
Mhm.
really enjoyable.
Yes.
And yes, it usually leads to a podcast guest. It usually leads to a fun task or a project or a social media collaboration. But I interviewed a pharmacist named Kevin Levers several years ago. And now I work as a brand ambassador for the Naked Pharmacy, who have natural supplements. And he worked in pharmaceutical industry in natural medicines for over 40 years. He's now got his own online company selling supplements. He's hired multiple pharmacists who give advice on natural supplements, the interactions between the drugs, all the things that you've talked about today. And being part of that kind of company has been so enjoyable for me. I love the products. My family uses them. My kids use them. But the relationship is growing and changing and molding as time is going on. So initially, it just started as an affiliate role. I'm giving a discount code to my audience. Yes, I'm getting commission off those sales, which is incredible. It actually runs this podcast in terms of all the apps and things I utilize. It's brilliant for that. But now the relationship's changing, where they had a new product come out last month and they had a massive launch party, lots of media, journalists, health specialists coming to watch a talk, and he asked me to be on the panel discussion. And I thought, oh, this is crazy. But I want to try something outside of my comfort zone. I want to continue working with them. Let's do it. And going to that event exposed me to incredible individuals I would have never met, whether it was famous people on TV, health specialists, PR agents who then said, wow, we need to get you on TV when it comes to pharmacy. And I was like, oh my God, that's crazy. But it just opens your opportunities. It opens your insight to other things that are happening in the healthcare space and things that you as a pharmacist could potentially get involved with. And as a pediatric pharmacist, I talked about a lot of the children's supplements in this talk. And people really resonated with the information because it was coming from a pediatric pharmacist, and they really truly understood the difference between what natural medicine has to offer versus the issues that we have with pediatrics and unlicensed medicines, and adding in lots of flavors and tastes for liquids and all of the things that we do on a day-to-day basis to try and get children to take medications, and altering doses from tablets and things like that, and having to crush things and mix it with food. And they really understood my perspective because it was coming from a specialist in that field, which was great. And now we've kind of had the conversation that the CEO wants to do talks, educational talks about natural medicines to massive companies all over the UK. And he's asked me to get involved. And that's just amazing.
Yeah,
All of
that is
these
amazing.
fun things are coming
Yeah.
out of it. I get to do more public speaking, which is something that I've really wanted to get more involved with in 2024. It was one of my goals. I get to work with an amazing brand, but also he's an entrepreneur and a pharmacist, so a great mentor for me and someone that I really enjoy working with. So you can see how opportunities arise when you least expect them, or when you just open your mindset to other things, and how that non-traditional approach can lead you to opportunities that you never ever thought you would be involved in. And I can see that's what's happening with you. How do you talk a lot about networking. How do you network traditionally? Is it mainly through LinkedIn?
Yeah, traditionally just through LinkedIn. I constantly, people are like, oh, you have so many connections. I just connect with anyone who looks like they're doing something interesting. And there's so many people doing interesting, amazing things. And so that's the primary way that I connect with anyone. And I hear a lot of people are like, oh, I prefer to network in person. It's like, of course, networking in person is amazing, but I just think the kind of unified attention that you get from just hey, I'm going to send you a message. Again, I understand people are busy, especially people who are very active on LinkedIn. They probably get maybe 40 messages a day. And so I, of course, will always, shoot my shot, so to speak, and I will send a DM. But if they're not going to respond, that's also fine. I understand they're busy. They have a lot of things on their plate, likely. So I always think it's worth just connecting and just seeing if people are willing to hop on a call. You'd be surprised how many people are willing to hop on a call. And so you have to test it out. The one thing I will say, in reference to what you just shared, is that, on my end, the majority of people I chat with is mainly just, hey, what's up? Would love to learn more about you, and more about what you're doing, rather than getting work or or anything like that. Those conversations, the, getting work and things like that tend to, come in following conversations, or maybe we have something in common that we realize that, oh, that's something that would help their company. But more often than not, it's just like kind of for my curiosity of wanting to meet someone and see, what exciting thing they're working on. And then also thinking about who can I connect them with in my network. Because as I meet new people, like even there's a company I spoke to a few weeks ago, and I'm like, they're looking for someone, an oncology pharmacist. I'm like, that is amazing. Like I know a lot about oncology, but I'm not an oncology pharmacist. So I'm always evaluating, am I the right fit for this? And if I'm not, I would love to connect them with like 3 oncology pharmacists to help them build out their, medical advisory board in a way that helps that company best, even if it's not me.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Yeah, I love LinkedIn has been an incredible place, and I've probably stepped up my kind of posting on LinkedIn and my DMs connections with people in the last sort of 8 to 12 months. And I've seen such a significant impact for my professional career, for the podcast. I've made some amazing friends through LinkedIn, people that I hope to meet up with face to face one day. And, we've really enjoyed having a relationship online, but also encouraging each other on the journey, because there's a lot of pharmacists who do genuinely support me. Like even when I'm posting all the time, they'll constantly comment, give me feedback, give me encouragement. And we do that for each other. So that kind of community online for pharmacy really does exist, and I do love it. Of course, I'm on YouTube a lot, and I do love that as well. I was using Instagram a lot for my pharmacist and my podcast journey, but I felt like having only kind of working full time and doing this on the side, and now having just the one day available, I've really had to sit down and figure out what is going to give me the best return on my time and, my investment in my time. And Instagram wasn't really giving me that much kind of feedback. So I've taken a little bit of a break from it to focus more on YouTube and LinkedIn for now. But obviously, I hope to come back to it when I've got more time and resource to get into it, because I do love Instagram as an app. Like I use it as an individual. I do love a scroll on there. But it is very time consuming to constantly create content for different platforms and kind of raise pharmacist diaries from that point of view. So I just needed to kind of make that shift for myself. I did want to ask you one more question, and it's about podcasting. So why did you decide to start a podcast? And tell me a little bit about your journey with it. Like, have you loved it? Have you been enjoying it? What has your experience been like?
Yeah, so I helped launch a podcast now a year or two ago. And so initially the idea was, as a part of that company so I helped co-found that company, Element Apothic, and used to be their chief scientific officer. Now I serve as an advisor. And, when we were thinking about how we can engage with healthcare providers, one of the first things I thought of was, let's do a podcast with Pharmacy Podcast Network and get in front of, pharmacists who want to learn more about natural medicines, who want to learn more about integrative medicine in general, and, learn a little bit about vetted products in the space. And so that was the initial intention, especially as we were building out the kind of medical affairs strategy. And, I say this all the time, but it's like a lot of CPG companies, especially small and growing ones, they might not have a medical affairs team. And I think that's one thing that pharma does really well is their org structure. And so it's like, okay, how can we build out this medical affairs strategy for our, HCP and consumer facing supplement product? And so one of the things that I was thinking about from a medical education perspective, but also content development perspective, was a podcast. And so that was the initial idea around creating it. And then we created episodes for a while, but I had these 2 interns I was working with on it, and it was incredible. But once they, completed their internship and they both, graduated and moved on to roles, I didn't have the support that I once had. And so we paused the podcast, at least for the foreseeable future. That's something that we're thinking about relaunching with a new season for next year, but to be determined. And it's, something that was a great experience for me. I think it taught me a lot about how to interview people. I think I'm still learning and growing and figuring out how to do that. Some of the companies I'm working with now, I'm helping lead, kind of webinar series that will be, or LinkedIn Live series that will be then turned into podcasts. So we'll download the audio and all of that. But that it is something that I'm continuing to learn and grow, and I'm really enjoying, because you get to speak with, and I'm sure you can resonate with this, but you get to speak with some incredibly smart people doing just amazing things to move either patient care forward or move, their particular industry forward. And so I've been enjoying the process, and it started off with that podcast, but now working with these other companies to, be one of their kind of medical education partners and think about, how we can create digestible, interesting, engaging content on their brands has really helped me figure out that it's something that I really enjoy doing. And I just love having organic conversations with people about, their background and, help them share a little bit about what they can contribute to help others.
Amazing. I obviously, clearly I love podcasting, but I initially started this journey to showcase what pharmacy as a profession has to offer, but also teaching undergraduate like pharmacy students is to help them to navigate the options that are available to them, how those pharmacists have transitioned into different roles, how they have enjoyed different aspects of their experiences and how it's led to different opportunities. Like, people will learn a lot from this episode as an example. And how to approach an unconventional pharmacy role, how to become an entrepreneur, how to think about doing things that you love and turning that into kind of your purpose. But now I can see that it's the stepping stone and it's the kind of foundation of a business that I can build. And I never thought that was going to happen for me. And here I am. So I'm really excited about that. And I've thought really deeply about what my journey is going to look like. And now I'm starting to actually coach other people to become podcasters. And part of that's come from learning about all the research and statistics that are done on podcasts. And a lot of that research comes from the US. There's over 5 million podcasts, and that seems like it's a very oversaturated market. But when you look at the statistics as to which one of those podcasts are actually active, who've published an episode in the last 12 months, that's only around 700,000, which is really small. But out of the 700,000, 1.5% have come from healthcare. So yeah, it's insane. So when you look at statistics like that, when I looked at those statistics, I was like, wow, not only do I get to raise pharmacy as a profession on a global scale with this podcast, I am now going to be the person who raises pharmacists as podcasters. Like, this is it. Like, this is an opportunity for me to help other people who've got an incredible amount of experience, expertise, knowledge, the ability to educate others, whether it's patients or other healthcare professionals. It's just going to be an incredible way to showcase your voice, your opinion, your knowledge, your experience. And so I'm very excited. I've started a quite a small community of pharmacist podcasters. It's a free sort of network that people can come and chat. I have templates, video tutorials, things like that. But I'm very excited about actually coaching individual people to then start a podcast and see it grow. And I can't wait for all of that to happen.
I can't wait to see all the outcomes, because as we were talking about it offline, it's like there's no one doing that yet. And so this is a real white space.
Yeah, I'm really lucky. And I'm so lucky that we've had a chance to kind of finally record this episode. I'm so pleased with the conversation that we've had. I've gotten to know you better, which is one of the major benefits of being a podcaster and meeting other pharmacists. I want to say thank you for your time, your energy, and your effort today. And where can people find you in terms of connecting with you? Because you may have people who might want to reach out or say hello, or just send you that DM on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I would say just send me a DM on LinkedIn, send me a connect request. Like, let's hop on a call, and would love to learn a little bit more about it, what everyone is building, or what everyone is doing in the space. Yeah.
Awesome. And thank you again. I really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you so much.